it works. It seems like everything is coming from many different directions, and you can't see patterns out of all this creativity. And I couldn't either, so I made a presentation so I could make sense of all of it. And while doing so, and also because I'm very passionate about it, I felt like we're at the beginning of incredible collaboration between AI and creativity and creative people, and that we have to be very optimistic about it. And that's what I'm going to try to do during this presentation: map the space and tell you why it's cool. And this space is really big, and we've only explored a small portion of it. So if I have only one mission here, is to give you a sense of this, the size of this space and how we can go about exploring it. This is the Uber Deep Field, and this is the number of copies of the Uber Deep Field that you need to fill the sky, 30 million. So what I'm going to do is take an arbitrary set of dimensions to map this space. 2 that relate to AI and 2 that relate to creativity. So computational, how AIs work; relational, how AI and humans interact; the steps of the creative process and how these connect; and the levels of abstraction that all these problems deal with. So let's start with computational. Basically, this is AI. The whole history of AI is how to get more mileage out of this. You have a world state, and you have a condition, and if this condition in this world state is fulfilled, you take an action. And from the beginning, we started very low, and we're trying to get more productivity out of this. In a language that speaks to programmers, you have some data, a data set. You find patterns in this data, and you have a process that says what you should do in this condition. For instance, we started with expert systems, and the data is, okay, you have a car and it doesn't work. And the condition, the pattern is the oil indicator is on, and there is this clumping noise that you hear. And the process is, okay, maybe you should check if you have a leak. And throughout the history of AI, this got more and more complex, having blackboards that are able to structure patterns to operate on the same data set, having hierarchical state machines that are able to simulate context by having patterns inside of patterns, planners that treat patterns as data so that they can operate on patterns and find consistencies and inconsistencies inside the patterns, neural networks that can extract patterns from data and operate on them, behavior trees that mix patterns and processes with a grammar that makes sense of how they can interact. And there is a lot of stuff. And the idea is more complexity, more depth, more understanding of these 3 elements, and more mixing of these 3 elements. So another dimension, and I will regroup these 2 because, well, we only have the means to display a 3D space on this screen, I'm sorry. So the other dimension is the relationship between human and machine. And we've been talking, and Taro has been talking a little bit about this. And it's essentially who is doing which part of the work and how the actors interact, be they machine or humans. And at the beginning of time, the human did everything. So you had to understand that your car had broken down. The humans wrote the rules. They had the expertise. That's where the expert comes from. And they wrote the rules, and you had to check them yourself. The process was the human does something and feeds the information back into the system. We've evolved a lot since then, and you have very complex interaction now, such as with deep learning, when you extract the machine extract patterns from dataset given by a human, and the patterns are used by the machine and presented to the human. They can feed them back to do something like I don't know, recognize cats from dogs, but also we'll see later a filter data set using this knowledge that is fabricated by the machine. So a lot of interaction. I won't go into details because it could be a talk on its own, but essentially it is the interactivity dimension. And when you go down this dimension, you get more complexity, more reflexivity, which means that the system looks at itself, it sees how it's working and can reason on how it's working. More agency, you can do more stuff and stuff that has more meaning. And expressiveness, you can transfer your intention and what you want to do into the system. And depth, you can have a representation of the world that makes more sense, be it at the meaning level or at the abstraction level. Now, with the creative process. So to find a dimension, a suitable dimension, I choose this one. There are a lot of models of what creatives do, and Roger van Hoek wrote this one, which is good, and the names are cool. So I chose this one, but it's basically all of them explain that the artist, when he creates, goes through 4 or 5 stages, and in this model there are 4 stages. First, you're the explorer, and the explorer gathers data. You find stuff that can feed your creative process, and then you're the artist, and the artist combines what the explorer has found in new patterns, in new ways. Then you have the judge, and the judge looks at this and says, okay, what is worth pursuing, what has value, and what must be thrown out. And then you're the warrior. When you're the warrior, you do the work. You don't question anymore. This is what you have to do, and you apply all the rules on the data that you've selected and the new ID, and you create. Actually, you create something, not just an idea of something. And in the development process that you are familiar with, the explorer is about research, inspiration, brainstorming, serendipity. The artist is about goals, constraints, innovation, design. The judge is about prototyping, testing, validation, and exploiting opportunities that you can find while you're creating stuff, or because the world changes around you. And the warrior is about development, polish, revision, and constraint solving. So, of course, you don't work like that if you're a creative. You are on the spectrum, and you have different roles at different times. For instance, Tolkien doesn't work like Martin at all because he's dead. But the way he created The Lord of the Rings is very different from the way that Martin is writing Song of Ice and Fire. You could say that the explorer part for Tolkien is much more important because his story is just a simple output of all the work he did to create a new myth for England, and how he did that is by fabricating the mythology, the languages, and associating new ideas together to create this myth. And then when you get to the judging part and the warrior part, you have less energy to spend to get a beautiful book. On the other hand, Martin is famous for rewriting each chapter dozens and dozens of times, so that when he finds something that he judges good, he can create the stories that is needed for this chapter to work, and the explorer part is less important for him. But this is a trick. This is a trick because Tolkien was able to write with so little energy here, because he spent a lot of warrior energy there, and he's able to judge and write what sounds right to him, because he has an extremely deep knowledge of political intrigues and wars in the 14th and 15th centuries in Europe. So it's a mix of this. I say that I wrote that the dimensions are non-linear, and that's why. Plus, it's a recursive process. When you're in the act of creation, actually, even if you're the full artist, you know about your art. So you have guiding principles. You have a judge that is in the background. And this judge has been fed by your research, looking at other artists, and your personal experience, your success and your failures. And the way you chose these to look at certain artists or to take on certain projects has been fed by your intuition, which is your artist back again. And you could do that at every stage. So you're all these dimensions, but you need to be all these people at any time. And if you want to break the mold, if you want to be innovative you have to feed your judge something that is not that. And so that's your artist that has to influence the judge. A recursive process. And the last dimension is the level of abstractions for the problem and output. What I mean by that is that most of what we've been talking about today is about the what level, the level of things and meanings. This is what you care about, and this is what you output. But there are other levels of abstraction that we can think about. The how level, how you do stuff. So what stuff you get, and the how level, how you do stuff, the level of methodology, tools, and techniques. And there is another level above that, is how do you use that to change the world? And that's the level of, or your art. And that's a level of purpose and transcendence. To give some perspective to these two dimensions, you can see in this grid, you have the 4 steps of the creative process and the 3 abstraction layers. And so you start here. You start with Da Vinci, trying to understand how to represent the world. And when you know how to represent the world, you can use that to create allegories. And when you understand that you can have meaning that is not representative, you get to symbolism with Bosch. And when it's not a chronological, of course. And to the point where you can, like with the Dutch school, represent a person's whole life in one painting, because you've combined all this. And then when you go up in abstraction, you have, as with Magritte, art that talks about the tricks, the techniques that you use, or art that talks about the process, or art that talks about the aesthetics, or art that talks about, okay, when you take all of this, how can you please the mind by creating things that you've never seen before? And when you go up again, you have transcendence. How do you change art? Monet, that didn't want to represent what he saw, but wanted to represent what he felt. Or Picasso, who wanted to use art as a conduit for raw emotion. Or Duchamp, that redefined what art meant, and art artifacts. Or Dali, that showed us how art could screw with our brains. And each of these artists are stuck in these boxes. Actually, each artist, just like with the creative process, follows a journey through these. And even each piece could be in several places in this. Magritte, you can find pieces of his everywhere in this space. Okay, so how do we combine these two things? We've already been using creative AI, AI and creativity for a while. Even if it's in the origin of our space, there are things out there that have totally changed the way we deal with the explorer phase. The data is indexed by a machine, and it changed the way we search things, we explore things. I couldn't do a presentation the same way if I didn't have a Google image. And there are many tactics that are already available to the general public, especially in video games, with procedural generation, when you have a simple process that uses parts created by humans to creating experience that have a high level of quality because it's been designed, but it's still very close to the origin of the world. This is the most popular game in the world, and it follows the same principles, but instead of using pieces, because these pieces are immutable from game to game, but instead of using pieces, it uses a process to define what the world should be like. And it can go very far. So this is a wider thing. The thing that I do stuff, but you can also have the judge at work with the designer saying, okay, these are the patterns of the emotional curve that I want to create, and use bits of content to create this curve by analyzing what's going on in the game. So there is an additional level of reflexivity. So we are a little bit further down the interaction axis. And the experience is totally different. The content is created to influence your emotions directly, generated to influence your emotions. A little bit closer to us, you can have machines that extract patterns from data and generate from there, like this wave function collapse. So you don't have to explain the rules. The patterns are found by the machine, and it tries to generate stuff that looks like what it's seen. So we've listened to what can be done in music. So I won't go into details, but the idea is that there are experts, there are musicians or technicians about what music should be, and they're able to create patterns that can be used to generate music automatically. And this is a very different. This is similar to this. But at a higher level of abstraction, because we're talking about how music works, and we can even use these principles to judge the generated music, like saying, okay, if this kind of generated music looks like or sounds like, share certain characteristics with classical music, for instance, and you can combine these patterns created by humans, saying, okay, in an office, a conference room should be far from the cubicles, but near the entrance, and the entrance should have these categories, so that you generate thousands of possible floor plans that can be checked against a judge that has been fed by a human. Deep learning is basically the extension of that to the machine. You extract these patterns instead of having them provided by the human, so that the machine can operate on them. So we talked about style transfer and how it can combine. Literally, it's the artist of Van Gogh combined two ideas to create something new. What is interesting is that it's a new way for the artist to do something. So you suddenly explore the space by feeding the system data, just data, and you have interesting things. So as an artist, your role as an explorer is to find two things that you think would be interesting to match, and the experience with with the camera, it's exactly that. Oh, I'm surprised, something new. And 2 weeks ago, you had Microsoft research published something that could be a new path in this space, which is, okay, you have two images. The images that they give are the first and the last, and as a human, you're saying, okay, there is a pattern. Now, can you give me a style transfer from this to this that is close to this, and from this to this that is close to this? So can you extract what is unique about this image that is not this image, and put it into the image, and vice versa? It's the only way that you can do that is by understanding how this image and that image are the same. So basically, you have to recreate patterns. The human tells you that there are patterns, and you have to find them. If this works on complex problems in the future, this would be revolutionary. So we talked about Deep Dream. Jim talked about Deep Dream. Deep Dream is the stuff of nightmares, but still it's very interesting because what it does is you have to feed Deep Dream something so that it can recognize patterns. Deep Dream wouldn't find dogs in a plate of spaghetti meatballs if it didn't know about dogs. So you can feed the system saying, okay, look at this plate and find me dogs, and Deep Dream will find dogs. But today it's just crazy, stupid, and nightmarish images. But imagine what you could do with this enhancing images or applying or pattern recognition in images using the same technique. And art, maybe. I don't know. And also the idea of having an arithmetic that can be applied to these patterns, which means that you provide the data set, but as an artist, you speak to the machine about the patterns that both you and it understand. There is a shared language here, saying, I know you understand blue, and I know you understand red, so remove the blue from this car and find me cars that are red instead. So this is very new, and with deep learning, this set of vocabulary that is shared can be extracted. So this is very powerful for exploration and for creativity. And when you add the idea that you can have some kind of style transfer across categories of items, like you have a set of bags and a set of shoes, and you can take a bag and change the shoes so that they match. Suddenly, what you can do is the exploration that we talked about earlier can be done in a generated space, not just on images that you had before. So okay, we have this. We've mapped this space. Where do we go from here? Well, up and away. So up and up is about climbing the ladder of abstraction, and away is about going toward more interaction. Climbing the ladder of abstraction requires humans. Today, we're not good enough that we can extract the art from pixels. We can find regularities, we can transfer styles, but we can't explain how art is done, and we can't explain why art is done just by looking at art. Maybe someday we will be able to do that, but today we can't. So there must be humans in the process. And basically, you have to make the machine understand what's going on here. And there are two ways of doing that, and they should be combined in my mind. The first is to create tools for artists that let them edit, create, and share data, but not only data, also patterns and processes and methodologies and intentions about their art. And what I mean by that is, okay, you have an artist, and it is using a tool, and this tool lets the artist talk about, okay, here's how I'm designing a cartoon animal, or here's how I'm designing a school, or here's how I change this image to make it feel sad. And the time process is very important, so that you understand what's going on, and you have a judge, a machine judge, that tries to extract knowledge from all this. Imagine how powerful such a tool would be if you knew if you were good at drawing cartoon animals, and you could share the cartoon animal pattern and the cartoon animal process, and why cartoon animal is cute to other people. Oh, I'm dead. This would be extremely powerful. So that's this part, the shared language. The other part is, let's ask artists. There are a lot of people that have already written about what this vocabulary is. Let's teach this vocabulary to machines. And because a lot of people have talked about how you tell stories and why they're powerful, or how you draw comics, or what are the characteristics of good design interface, or architecture, or food, cooking, or data representation. So we could take these patterns and teach them to the machine, so that we come at the problem from both sides, from the pixels and from what they mean and how they should work. And we could even do that not only with the judge, but with the artist, help the creativity of the artist by using methods like Brian Eno's object strategy that gives you random constraints, or exploring the culture through symbols and feeding this to the machine. And so this is a way is moving toward the Engelbart space. What is the Engelbart space? Engelbart is the guy who invented basically all the concepts that we use today in modern computing. But his goal was to have a tool that allows people to collaborate, and not only collaborate, but understand how they collaborate, how they can improve their collaboration, and how this process can even be improved. What he didn't know is that AI could be part of this. From Google Image, we could have a loop of interactivity that would allow us to explore better and give feedback to the machine with the shared language that I was talking about, so that we can diverge and explore, or converge and judge when we need, and we can talk about why we're doing that and the patterns we want to apply to our work. We've seen that the beginning of the vocabulary and techniques is here. We just need more, and work is done in this. But we can go beyond the Engelbart space. The Engelbart space is a beacon, a guiding light, but we can go beyond that because he couldn't envision everything, even if he was a genius. And beyond that is to treat the actors in the interaction and the creation as part of a process that is mediated by a machine, but a process that deals with wide patterns and process, not just data. So the facilitation, mediation, and enhancement of creative collaboration across all domains, and because it's saying about how to improve this process. But this means that we can share these how to draw the cute animals, and it has meaning across several actors, and we can build on that. So I hope I've convinced you that this space is big. We've only scratched the surface, and we have to be very optimistic about where we can go. Thank you.